you're the most important person. He asks you all the questions, and when you pick up again, maybe months later, he remembers everything where you're up to, and he asks those questions. How about this and how about that? And you just feel important. If you get a chance to get Dave by himself, it's a rare thing. But yeah, he and I have had very, very deep conversations, and I really do consider him a close personal friend. And he is the CEO of Advanced Automation Corporation, AAC, Special Weapons and Ordnance Corporation, SWORD, the Storeroom for the Needy Incorporated, and he is a Vice President of International Affairs for United Israel World Union. Dave, as CEO of AAC, is responsible for the operation of an 80-person company that focuses on unique out-of-the-box solutions for military applications. Dave is a visionary, that's for sure, and sees how to apply state-of-the-art technology to the tip of the spear. Now, Dave said to me, "You're not going to read all his bio, are you?" Just he said, "Don't read it all." But I just want to read this part. He said, "It says Dave is an avid supporter of the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, the excavation on Mount Zion in Jerusalem, Israel. Dave also has ties to Blossoming Rose Park in Iravot. Who's been there? Come on, you've been there. Yeah, a lot of us have been there. It's a spectacular place. Been there many times with Dave, and he's currently involved in finding the Moses Scroll. So he's a fellow Shapiriologist. He's a good friend. So welcome to the podium, Dave Tyler.
Thank you. Thank you, Jono. I don't know what you said, but it must have been nice. I'm just wanting you to know, I need you to see my shirt. Are you ready to travel at light speed? It's light speed. One of my favorites, Albert Einstein. It's a rock star t-shirt, and on the back, I'll show you later, are like he went on a tour of how he changed our understanding of the universe. So I'm very excited. Let's see, we're up there now. Okay, great. So this is my question, why? And it's been a question I've had my whole life. I didn't accept what was told to me all the time. I did learn not to run out into the street in front of cars after my dad popped me a few times. But other than that, it's been a long quest to find true faith. And so the issue that really kind of solidified this was in 2017, I lost my oldest son, Daniel. He was 34. I don't want to get people down, but it changes your view. One day I was sitting on the beach with James Tabor, Lori, my wife Patty, and I drank so much I didn't know, honestly, I did everything according to the rules, and why did my son get taken away? And James said, "Why don't you write a book about it?" So actually, he was the one who suggested this. And the sea captivated me, and the eternity of the sea. So one of the things I've learned is the greatest barrier to learning is thinking we already know something. And I'm going to talk about these in greater detail. George Harrison, I'm a fan of the classic rock people and the beat poets and stuff. I get confused when I look around at the world. Everybody's running around, and it's Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan said he was not busy being born, as busy dying. And yet nobody's trying to figure out what's the cause of death and what happens when you die. That, to me, is the only thing of any real importance. The rest is secondary. But certainly the question of why we're here and seeing the forest through the trees is sometimes one of the most difficult things that you have. If you like thinkers, Dr. Feynman, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics, an outspoken Jew, he said, "I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned." So you coming in, Feynman, if you listen to him, to say he was brilliant was an understatement, and funny. And he taught at Cornell University, not far from where we live. So one of the other issues that kind of bogs us down as we get older is the following. We move out of the curiosity zone. So understand what this is. The level of curiosity versus the level of perceived knowledge. There's a difference, not your actual knowledge. So once you get to know something so well, you become overconfident and you're incurious and you're not going to find new things. This happens in all kinds of things. Um, and it happens to a lot of people that are experts in their field. So I try to not be ignorant and curious and incurious, but I try to keep in that middle level. That doesn't mean knowledge isn't continuing to be gathered and proceed in a good way. It just means that the more I know I don't know. And you've heard this term before. And when Einstein looked up at the sky, he thought the universe and all these other bright stars was the end of it. We found out that those are galaxies, and there's 150 billion, some trillions of stars in those galaxies. So the world is bigger than Einstein even could have perceived. So that's something that I want to do. So then, really, my talk today is going to be about faith and knowledge and science. And having graduate degrees in theoretical mathematics and computer science and electrical engineering, I have a great faith in science, but I don't think it answers some very primordial questions. Faith, it generally refers to a confident belief or trust in someone or something without needing the empirical evidence or proof. I have faith that Jodelle Onstadt will be putting out that second volume, but I have no empirical evidence. On the other hand, James Tabor is putting out a new video every other day. I'm writing a book, and I don't know. It was a catharsis, so I don't know. It will come out, and I hope that I've really got some good writings. Religious faith, if you've ever been to Auschwitz and you don't want to go there. I believe in the sun even when it's not shining. I believe in love even when I don't feel it. I believe in God even when he's silent, scratched in the wall, knowing where they were going. Of course, Corrie ten Boom, never to be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. And of course, Ralph Waldo Emerson, all I have seen teaches me to trust the Creator for all I have not seen. And again, James spoke about this morning. What happens afterwards? Well, one of the things that we've discussed is that I trust that it doesn't matter. I trust that this God that we serve is going to make things right. And it's probably, you don't know, you couldn't handle what he has. I mean, you don't have an idea. That's what I want to keep that up there. So what is science? Well, science is a way for us to kind of analyze the world we live in. It's very systematic, and it builds and organizes knowledge in the form of testable explanations and predictions about the universe. And a lot of it's based on observation. There's theoretical science also. And so it is a very trustworthy endeavor. People wouldn't have GPS on their iPhone or their Android phone and be able to go anywhere without mixing, Einstein's theory of relativity in 3 satellites. And that's how we know where we are within 6 inches now. So these are important things. I don't know if you ever heard of Alan Sokal, but he's a great NYU physicist, and he is also a man of Jewish faith. Whenever conflict arises between religion and science, it's due to human error, either through the misinterpretation of religious scriptures or the lack of a more complete understanding of science. So you got to straighten one of them out. Alan Sokal did something I'll just tell you on the side, the Sokal experiment. He said, I'm so well respected to his friends, I'm going to write a paper that's not true. I'm going to submit it, and no one's even going to look at it, and they're just going to print it. And they printed it. And after they printed it, he came out and said, that's all BS. So that was a Sokal debacle. But he was saying, it's kind of how things are done today, especially on YouTube, right? Someone says something, I know the one supplement you need to change your life. Really? Okay. And of course, the Rambam, he's Sephardic, and our family traces its roots to the Sephardim. And I loved what he said. You need to understand metaphysics if you're going to understand who the Creator is. And I feel this is true. So you have physics, then beyond physics, metaphysics, and it helps us to understand. James talked a lot about the metaphysical today, the 4 forces, Einstein thought there were 7 forces in those days, right? Now there's 4. Happens to be the same as the name of God, Yud He Vav He. His number comes into 26, right? The name of Yud He Vav He is 26. And there are 26 combinations in the DNA. I don't think these are, I think these are meant to be. His signature is there. You have to look. I even hate to say his signature. Its signature is there because it's beyond male and female. We respectfully call him father, but he's our mother and he's beyond anything we can even conceive. So that's a very big thing. I like to talk to people about the truth. Well, here are the main theories of what the truth is. The truth, you can't handle the truth. What is it? It depends on what you're talking about. The truth, correspondence theory, and it seems like it's right. It seems to make sense. There's a coherence theory. It's not very coherent the way you talk. Some of these wild conspiracy theories are not coherent. The pragmatic, the pragmatist, the constructivist, deflationary or minimalist theories, scientific perspective, is it proven, theological perspective, what is truth in the terms of the Catholic Church or the Orthodox Jew? It's different. And of course, my favorite, philosophical skepticism. And by the way, before I go any, I did print out my paper. I got 30 copies up here. It is 30 pages long, and I can't go into all the subjects, but it goes into each one of these topics in much more detail. It's kind of a basis for the book I'm writing, so I wanted to leave that with you. So that's important. So there are many disciplines of the truth. Of course, philosophy, right? And if you want to step back and take the God view, philosophy's had 3 ages, right? Pre-modern, modernism, and postmodernism. Now they're trying to come up with metamodernism. And what's the problem? In pre-modernism, the church dictated all philosophy. In modernism, you had some good outcomes. The Constitution of the United States of America. And its first 10 amendments, Jono probably wouldn't know this, called the Bill of Rights. And when they came out, they were the most liberal, radical statements about individual rights that were ever written to that point in history. People forget these things. Theology, science, mathematics is where I came in, the proof of things. And we would always have in a graduate degree, the integral of the sine of x is minus cosine x, let's just say. Okay, prove it. And that gets to the point where you start wrestling with the basics. Linguistics, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. Law, both biblical law and laws of, the government. History, everyone wants to rewrite history, and some of it needs to be rewritten. But as you know, some of it is probably correct. I'll talk a little bit about that. Psychology and cognitive science are studies in truth. What is true to you? It's a big question. Don't ask too many times. And sociology and anthropology truths. Now, there's a famous Japanese scientist, Dr. Toguchi. Does anyone know who he is in quality? He said, ask why 7 times and you'll get the answer. And that's why the Japanese quality became so good. It was so horrible when I grew up. Well, that's a Japanese toy, but now they have high quality products. So truth in language. So one of the problems I personally see is people don't even know how to really construct sentences and speak correctly. In the schools I grew up, it was I spent my entire 3rd grade just learning cursive writing, and the teacher would say, "You don't make your B's correctly. Write 1,000 B's for me." And it was drilled into us. Maybe that's not the right way to do it, but it is a good thing. Formal logic. This is. I just brought this. This is from the Calgary and University of Canada in Calgary. This is just a short introduction to formal logic. So when you apply this to language, a lot of things start happening. And if you want to come up and take a look at it, it's downloadable, it's free. So for all X, whatever X is, when you start reading, you're going to look at things. And one of the biggest problems that I see is that people use fallacies. Does everyone know what a fallacy is? Just to help us out, I printed out up here a list of the 19 common logical fallacies. I got about 10, 15 copies. So what happens? People speak a sentence as if it's true, but it's actually false. And you get a lot of these. So fallacy like ad hominem is an argument or reaction directed against a person rather than a position they're maintaining. So if so and so said it, it can't be true. Well, that's not a statement. That's a fallacy, right? Straw man, right? Appeal to authority. Well, the Catholic Church said this is the way it should be. So, well, wait a minute. What's that got to do with the price of tea in China? Anyways, there's a lot of them. But when you start looking at language and you analyze it, I hope to someday do this to the Moses Scroll. And I've got some people in Calgary interested. I didn't tell them what it was about, but it's interesting. Another issue when you're researching, the big why is epistemology, the theory of knowledge. And it's a branch of philosophy that's really concerned with the theory of knowledge, and it kind of investigates the nature, the limitations, the validity of our knowledge. The problem is, if you make decisions based on non-valid knowledge, you can get into trouble. And this is true in every walk of life: medicine, engineering, and of course, religion. And so Ross is going to end this whole thing with what is the real Bible? And that's going to be interesting, because are there things in the Bible, and we'll get into some of it, that are not really true, or they added? So that's a big problem. So when we ask the question why, and I mean that as an adverb, there's 4 different ways we can use why, what, wheres, and whys as a noun, right? But I'm talking about the adverb why. There's the epistemological aspect, a way of seeking causes, linguistic and cognitive, curiosity, the capacity for the abstract thinking, the existential version. There's a scientific aspect. Why does it rain? And you keep asking, theological aspect. Why did God make these laws, or whatever? And then there's a psychological aspect of asking why, and our desire to make sense of our experience around us. Psychologically, when my son passed, I kept asking why. It just didn't make sense. So it really comes down to, I'm really folding back towards the power of all powers here. Why does existence exist? Why? The question of why the universe exists is one of the most profound questions that we can ask. Forget your life just for a moment. Why are there planets? Why is there a periodic table of elements? Why? How did this happen? And of course, as Dr. Tabor alluded to this morning, the scientific version doesn't really give us an answer, does it? It's a materialistic view of the world. So there's philosophical perspectives, theological, of course, scientific, and existential human people talk about this perspective. So a big question is this: what was before the beginning? Before the beginning of time as we know it. You read the Big Bang, Genesis and the Big Bang by Dr. Gerald Schroeder, who I had the honor of meeting in Jerusalem. It's kind of starts 14 billion years ago, but really, what was before that? So there's scientific views. The Big Bang theory says there could have been other Big Bangs. There could have been just quantum fluctuations that all of a sudden came into a realization. They collapsed, and we'll talk about that. And then there's multiverse theories, that there's many universes, and we're just in one particular universe. As one of my acquaintances, Dr. Brian Greene, who wrote The Elegant Universe, I got to trade a lot of emails with him. He said, truth is stranger than fiction. Certainly at the quantum level, it is. So there's philosophical and theological type perspectives, metaphysical or theological interpretations, and then limits of human understanding, like the concept of time. So let me give you an example I hope you've all have thought of. It's going to go on forever. Infinity. Well, what's infinity this way? Mean there always was? Well, what was before there always was? I don't know. Well, it's pretty mind-boggling. It's a limitation. So that leads to another issue. Is time real? Wait, what do you mean by that, Dave? Well, tell you what I mean. In the quantum field, every aspect of the universe is captured in quantum wave functions. When we apply a measurement to them, they collapse and they get us a value. So as we do that, there's a sequence of events that happens. Perhaps, and this is a big thought, it's a big argument with really very brilliant people, perhaps our minds call time the sequencing of those collapsing functions. There's something that's a big argument here. Length, height, width, mass, those are all measurable. But time, how do you measure time? Seconds? That's just an invention. If you want to really know where it came from, it comes from the Babylonians. Why is it in base 60? Watch my mouth. And so my point is, time, is it real? Or is it a perception? Let me give you another way the beautiful brain works. Yeah. We can see, it's about 6 foot down to the floor for me. It's like 25, 30 feet over to that door. Very easy. We'll get into an airplane. It doesn't look, you don't have a fear. You shouldn't. It's used logarithms to process it. So if you've ever parachuted or floated in a balloon, 200 feet's far scarier than 30,000 feet. Because our brain uses logarithms, and it's a very powerful concept. It's a visual processing element. So anyways, is time real? I have a paper up here called In Defense of Real Time, just in case people wanted to see what the arguments were. And we really don't have an answer. And that's okay. That goes towards my big thing. So really, in our understanding, we're trying to reach a theory of everything, which combines the theory of relativity, which is the big object, the cosmos, theory of quantum mechanics, which is the subatomic, and perhaps the theory of strings, which isn't validatable right now, is the way that they're going to come up with it. It's what Einstein died doing, right? The theory of everything. And you'll understand where it comes. But the issue is this: it's soulless, and that's the point of it. So it might be a good description of what happens, but it's not really all there is to the universe, and we'll get into that. That's because the reductive materialism said we had some sort of physics. Out of that emerged chemistry. Out of that emerged biology, then a psychology, and then eventually a consciousness. I don't believe this view personally, but it's the standard view that consciousness was the last thing that happened. This is the biocentric view, Dr. Robert Lanza, that a consciousness viewed the quantum field and the rest came. And that consciousness would be the power of all powers. So that's my thought about that. As a quick aside, Genesis and the Big Bang is brilliant. If you've had the chance to read it, it explains why God created the universe and everything that's in it in 6 days. Depends on where you're standing. If you're standing in the middle, it's been 6 days. If you're standing on the outside like we are, it's been almost 14 billion years. So the time has been bent. The big thing that Einstein brought to us was distance equals rate times time. The only variable is rate. Time's a variable. Oh, no, it's not. It's 3 seconds just passed. Well, approaching the speed of light, time slows down. At the speed of light, time is undefined. Uh-oh. That's a problem. And then it runs backwards. So I would suggest you read Genesis and the Big Bang. And Dr. Schroeder is, to say brilliant is an understatement. So I want to get back to this observer effect. So the idea is that when you observe something, you change it. And let's take it in the real world. you can check your pressure in an automobile tire, but you're going to let a little air out, so you've actually changed the pressure. But it's far deeper than that. And so once light or our vision hits an object, things have changed. They can never know the exact speed and position of these small particles because one or the other. So that's why I bring this up. So the big effect that we saw was the double slit experiment, and thank God this happened. And then, of course, the Germans, scientists recently have done the double slit. So what happens? So is light, a is it a particle or a wave? It's both. Well, what do you mean? So when we start getting into it, it's pretty simple. That's the patterns it leaves. The other issue I will say is this: the Germans did the double slit, and they looked at the double slit results. The first double slit changed. Well, that already happened. Now, that's the nature of what we're talking about here. So when we try to understand the universe, we've kind of come to this point where for us to get up to God's level, it's going to be steep, in my opinion, if ever. So I'm content with not knowing that. So obviously, von Neumann and Wigner did the interpretation that consciousness collapses the wave function. It's interpreted of quantum mechanics in which consciousness is postulated to be necessary for the completion of a process of quantum measurement. And so this is very, very powerful. I'm going to slip over now into us as people. So it's believed that all conscious living things are conscious, even plants. Beyond consciousness is sentience, and that's what our animals are, sentient, and we're sentient. But there's sentient and sapient, which is who we are. And you know the story. We're called Homo sapiens. We're sapiens. And that is different than just being sentient. So my dog is happy and it sees me and it lives in the moment. But we don't live in the moment. We think about the past. We think about the future. We contemplate. We're made in the image of the Almighty God. The other thing that I like to try to tell people is if you're just a good person and you're healthy, you're gonna be able to get data, information, and then knowledge and do things. But wisdom, that's left for only a few. It's the one thing that can't be taught is wisdom. It's like humor, right? How can you teach humor? It's an extremely oddball thing. So having said that, we also have the other issue that I want to blend into my final, once I get to my point, you'll understand why I had to go through all these things. Euhemerism is mythology is history. And it's the theory that myths originate from real or historic events or personages and provides an intriguing lens through which to examine the narratives of the Hebrew Bible and other religious texts. If they weren't extended or exaggerated, they wouldn't have gone on. So I don't want to get people upset, but maybe, the Bible was done this way. Certainly Aesop's fables are done this way. They're teaching good things, not a bad thing. They're myths. And so the idea that there is some germ of truth that is something I believe for certain. And then they were expanded so that they would move on. I read early on in my study of Christianity that there was some thought of not putting in the so-called Old Testament. But they vetoed that idea because it would mean that the Christian writings were just relatively recent. In other words, they needed that 2,000-year history to make it a real myth. Please don't be angry if that offends you. So the other thing that popped out of all this was the ontological perspective of God's existence, and so we look at this and we try to understand. Can we prove there's a God? And, I'm going to just cut up to the answer. You can't prove there's a God. But these ontological experiments, they give us some view as to what God might have been or might be. And so, of course, one of the first primary ones was Anselm of Canterbury, and he kind of said that God being that which nothing is greater than can be conceived must exist in reality because existence in reality is greater than the existence in the mind alone. And it sounds like a not that powerful of an argument, but it's quite a powerful argument. Um, I also think you've heard people, they speak ontologically when they say, well, look at the design. It's too much there. You know, my brother always likes to say, look at this little dog. How could it just have emerged? It's amazing, that kind of stuff. Of course, there's a lot of them. St. Thomas Aquinas, the five ways in his Summa Theologica, presented five arguments for the existence of God. And he argued for motion, causation, contingency, degree, and the teleological argument, which is argument from design. There's been new people that have, like Paley, that have done better jobs at it. There are many people that did it. I can't name them all, but that's a pretty interesting thing. Then there was the mathematicians, which was where I came in. And of course, Pascal was a great mathematician, and he made a wager. If you ever heard of Pascal's wager, but he argues that it's in one's best interest to believe in God, since the possibility of eternal reward in heaven outweighs any advantage of believing otherwise. And there are many ways that people thought about it. Rene Descartes also presented ontological arguments for the existence of God, suggesting the idea of a perfect being must have originated from that being itself. You couldn't even conceive of a perfect being if there wasn't a perfect being, so to speak. If you read these, there's a lot there to good. Of course, Maimonides said that the existence of God from a philosophical standpoint, drawing heavily on Aristotelian thought. His arguments are more about the demonstrating consistency of belief in God with reason rather than direct proofs. So people have thought about this for a long time, and I would suggest, it's interesting reading. Maybe not something you want to do. So there's both scientific and philosophical points of view, and so from our point of view, I believe it more in terms of looking at the design. Is all I'm going to say. Kurt Gödel did an ontological proof. It's in the paper, and he proved God mathematically. People have since said there's some errors in it, but like I said, I felt that it's a pretty powerful predicate calculus. So he uses these kind of approaches, and again, there are exercises in this kind of thing. So there are a lot of physicists that do believe in a creator, and it's kind of like meant like hey, all scientists don't believe in God. A lot of, especially astronomers, believe in God because of the vastness of it. So these are the perspectives that we can look at it from, philosophically, theologically, scientifically, and other ways of looking at it. I don't want to get into too many of these. So then the other thing is, as we grow up, there's these factors affecting our spiritual growth, and obviously, I think I like the term that my Christian friends use. There, but for the grace of God, go I. I wasn't born in Gaza, and taught to hate Jews and to kill people. I was born in a good family. They were Roman Catholics, and they instilled faith. But then as I grew up, there's personal experiences and questions that make me start to question God and question all these things. And as I said before, in 1968, the world was coming apart as it seems. We saw it on TV, the Vietnam War, the riots, the Democratic National Convention went haywire in Chicago, a lot of other things I've spoken about before. And, I remember standing in that Catholic church looking at that crucifix with Jesus hanging from it and said, my mom, she really got upset. How do you know that's God? And that didn't go over well. But my mom and dad died having the Torah faith, and that's something where I have a beautiful thing. Another thing is community and relationships. So the Jews I met were, as my friend Abraham called themselves, delicatessen Jews. They didn't have a real faith. they were just Jewish by birth. I saw a lot of communities out there of people. Let me give you one example. When you go to Jerusalem, it's awful easy to follow Shabbat. You know this, right? 'Cause they just follow it. I'd love that in my neighborhood. The guy's got the lawnmower running, the next guy's chopping down a tree. And I'm like, Patty and I just want to have some time in the backyard where we meditate and we listen to Ross. And now we do the Zoom calls, but it's still a beautiful time for us. So I like the community. And I might say the people here, you're part of the community because of the internet and so forth. And I'm very happy to know all of you. So many different ways of reaching us. I was speaking to Ross and Dr. Tabor about, I'm amazed and proud that there are so many brilliant so many brilliant women that come in our Zooms and teach me and talk to me. It's not just a male dominated thing. It's open for anyone's discussions. And some people on there, they're kind of crazy. Others are not. And you learn. Maybe that crazy person, one of my famous Jewish friends who was a lawyer, was trying to preach to him about Jesus. Well, the historically Jewish Jesus, trying to get him straight. He said, David, maybe one day you'll come my way. And he walked out of my house. I'm much closer to his belief than he was to mine at the time. And anyways, there's a lot of other factors, right? Life transitions and milestones. Losing my son, losing my parents, losing a pet. We just lost a pet. It's a transition. That beautiful face won't be there in the morning. And the milestones. James said he felt like at 78 he could say things. I certainly feel that I'm starting to be getting it. Lose the tact, man. My dad would say whatever he wanted to say. Personal practices and disciplines. So as I got older, I drink less. I work out a lot more. I eat less and more correctly until I came here and all that food was staring me in the face. And the point is that it's the discipline. The personal practice, Shabbat, it changed me. And I've said before, the world would spin around 7 days at a time. Well, now there's this 24-hour period. Stop. And one of the things I wanted to say last night about the lighting of the candles, a lot of great ideas. One other little idea that I have is once those candles are lit, it's over, baby. Unless someone's dying and has a heart attack, we're at Shabbat. And I love Shabbat. Also, the integration and holistic growth. I have to meet people here that have different ideas than I do. I've talked to people of other religious faiths. My friends from India who are Hindus in New York City call me Uncle Jesus. And I'm proud to let them call me Uncle Jesus. But I learned a lot about their faith, and you learn and grow. Obviously, Dr. Tabor's taught religious studies, so he's had the privilege of seeing much more than me. So it really comes down to me, the Decalogue faith, and I'm going to make I'm going to go to the book of Job here in the last 5 minutes. We know the 10, and this is my faith. I'm proud to say this is my faith. And it's changed my life. And really, it's the most powerful way to set up a society is to give them the Decalogue faith. If people lived like this, there would be no war. There wouldn't be the divorce rate of 60% in the United States. It would be a different world. So I want to talk about God in action for a moment. And that is in the book of Job, which is a book that has continued to enlighten me since the passing of my son. I wrote a paper on that, and that's up here too, but I'm going to kind of summarize it quickly. So the one thing that I realized afterwards, I've read the book of Job like it's a story, but then I started contemplating and looking at things in, what does Ross say? A horizontal fashion. So Job's a good guy. He's following the rules. He's doing what's right. And then all hell breaks loose. What happened? Well, there's an experience that Job is going to go through. And that experience is kind of spoken of in other books. In Dante's Inferno, you don't run away from the inferno. You go through it to get to the other side. Losing a son, fighting in war, these things bring you to another place. And after all this happens, finally God speaks to Job, which I would have given up a long time ago and cursed God, I think. Does God apologize? Not a bit. He didn't say sorry. He gives one of literature's most epic speeches. People don't realize the power of the speech that starts in Job chapter 38. Then Jehovah answered Job out of the whirlwind. Can you imagine this? Who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Then he doesn't talk like the people today. Gird up now thy loins like a man. Ooh, that's sexist, isn't it? Be a man, for I will demand of thee and declare thou unto me, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. I can't imagine that discussion. I'd have been really panicking. And Job spoke back to them. He goes, this is a few verses down. I know you can do all things, and no purpose of yours can be constrained. I have uttered that which I understood not. Well, I've done that a lot in my life. Things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. Hear, I beseech thee, and I will speak. I will demand of thee and declare unto thee. Now this is it right here. I had heard of thee by the hearing of the ear. This is powerful. But you know what that is, right? Now mine eye sees you, wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. Job, come on. He now sees God. That's a different thing, man. Hearing it and then seeing it. Let's just think of in our own lives, something simple. I listen to the Apple Music. But when you stand in front of Bob Dylan and he's singing in front of you and you're in the front row, James knows about this. It's a different experience. So what is knowable? You know, St. Thomas said, God is tamquam ignotum. No thought can contain him. No word can express him. He is beyond anything we can intellectualize or imagine. I know you don't want to hear about the Lao Tzu boy, but I had a Shih Tzu, so I'm going to say it. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Maybe these people knew something about what we're speaking about. We should go back and look closer at what they said. I love Albert Einstein. There are two ways to live. You can live as if nothing is a miracle, and you can live as if everything's a miracle. David Ben-Gurion, a Jew who doesn't believe in miracles, is not a realist. And of course, I have said life's an ongoing revelation. What has been revealed to us today couldn't have been revealed yesterday. We wouldn't have understood it. And I do believe that's what happens going forward. You're not ready to hear what God has for us. We're not ready yet. But we're being prepared and groomed. And someday we'll be able to see that. So, in summary, the question of why the universe exists intertwines with our philosophical reasoning, scientific discovery, our theological belief. They all offer different insights, but highlighting the limitations of our knowledge. That's the common thing. Why can't we know this? Because we're humans. Well, that's where we're at this point. And who knows? We are the B'nai Elohim. You know, God created us in his image. People talk about, well, what are we going to eat in heaven? I don't think we're going to eat anymore. I think God doesn't eat. We don't have to worry about what's kosher or killing animals or plants. We'll just exist. It's a thought of mine right now. And while science proves our mechanisms, theology offers a purpose, and philosophy questions the foundation and nature of existence. The ultimate answer will always remain elusive, but we should contemplate it. And it not only looking at these things not only deepens our understanding, but also reflects our perpetual quest to understand our place within it. Well, what am I here for? I want to say one quick thing. I know I've run out of time. Ross's brother, Hobo Shoestring, You don't think that guy had an impact on the world? Go on YouTube and look for hobo shoestring tributes. You'll see 70-year-old men crying, saying hobo's gone. When I die, no one's going to do that. Of course, you're going to be a wealthy lady. A blend of science and philosophy. You know, Einstein said this. I'm just going to end it really quickly here. Everyone who is seriously interested in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that a spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to man, and one in the face of which our modest powers must seem humble. This is exactly what Dr. Tabor said this morning. Of course, Schrodinger, you know the Schrodinger cat? Patty doesn't like that because the cat can die in the experiment. The total number of minds in the universe is one. In fact, consciousness is a singularity phasing within all beings. Maybe I'm starting to sound like I'm on some sort of drugs. I'm going to leave with one thought, the most powerful thought, going back to that powerful book of Job. If he thought only of himself and withdrew his spirit and his breath, all living things would die together and humanity would return to dust. It'd be over. Again, there's a lot more in the paper that I couldn't get into. I cut out as much as I could. It was like, what fingers do I have to cut off? But I hope that this was somewhat got you thinking. And like I say, the paper's here if you want to talk about it. And I have the paper about Job and my experience of understanding Job in my life. How Ross Nichols also was a Job fan in the beginning. Weren't you, Ross? There you go. So there's something that kept us all together. And the other thing is that you've all been kept together here by, you know, we all have a reason for being here. I don't think this is some sort of accident. So I think back to David Horowitz, and I'm certainly glad that he created United Israel World Union. And I hope we can move forward with that open-mindedness. And I hope to be involved at the UN. And I've got my reporter's license, and I've been invited to go back. So maybe we'll go back there. And it's not a good time for Jews and supporters of Israel in New York right now, but I'm not going to let that stop me. So again, my mind is open to where God is and what God is, and I think the Hebrew Bible gave us the pattern, the Decalogue. After that, it's all commentary. All right, thank you.